So I am Melinda Voss. I'm with the Ohio River Foundation, and we're coming to you live from the Thomas More Biology Field Station in California, Kentucky. And we have a bunch of different folks I want to introduce you to from both Ohio River Foundation and from Thomas More University. And today, what we are doing is celebrating World Water Day. And if you're not familiar with what that event is, it is a global event. So we are celebrating water today with people from all over the world. And it's a special time to give appreciation to what it means to have access to clean water, because that certainly isn't the case for people across the world. There's many communities that don't have access to that, and we're grateful to have that here where we are in Ohio with the mighty Ohio River. So it's a day to appreciate water. And what we really want to call attention to today is all of the crazy cool critters that call these local waters that we have all around us in our community. They call these local waters home. And there are some wild creatures, organisms living in our local watershed, in the streams and creeks and rivers that you probably pass over on the way to school or to work. They are residing there, and we want to introduce you to some. And I think you'll be wowed and amazed, because they are wild critters living just there under the surface. But before I introduce some of those creatures and the people here who are knowledgeable about them, I want to briefly mention who we are, so who your hosts are. The Ohio River Foundation is an organization that's been in existence for over 20 years now, and does all kinds of great education work, restoration work, and advocacy work in the greater Cincinnati region, but also as far north as Columbus and down into Kentucky and Lexington and Louisville. And when I say we do education work, that is these types of programs. We travel to schools with our Muscles in the Classroom program, and we also host schools in the rivers, the tributaries of the Ohio River and the rivers, creeks, and streams, and do science with those students in ankle deep in those streams and rivers. So we'll mention more about our education programs, but we also do restoration work. So when we talk about restoring the watershed, that's work that's done to maybe remove invasive species, plant native species, help stabilize eroding banks, removing small dams on tributaries. So there's a lot of restoration work that Ohio River Foundation does. And then of course, advocacy work too, to make sure the rules and regulations that help keep our water clean are up to par. So that's a little bit about what Ohio River Foundation does. And now I want to introduce Chris Lorenz Dr. Chris Lorenz from the Thomas More University Biology Field Station. So I'll kick it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Melinda, and thank you, Ohio River Foundation. I want to acknowledge Rich Kogan, the Executive Director of the Ohio River Foundation, Melinda, Evan, Catherine, and all the great staff that they have there that do really important work. That is what we're celebrating today, World Water Day. So between their research, education, outreach, conservation, and advocacy programs, we're really fortunate to have partners like the Ohio Riverway. And I'm a biology professor at Thomas More University. So I study biology, study life, and in particular, I studied life on the river. So we have a biology field station right along the Ohio River. And field stations, think about them as schools for the nature. So we study the environment here at the field station. We study the environment out in the field, and we also study the environment in the lab. So today we're going to show you a little bit of our lab programs. And as Melinda mentioned, some of the cool creatures that we get to study and interact with. But then we want to invite you to come back out. Come out for a field trip. If you're with a school, come out for our summer camps, or just a day hike. Come out, enjoy the river. And as Melinda mentioned, we're really lucky to have safe, clean, abundant drinking water source right here in our backyard. Also a resource for recreation. And then finally, a really cool ecosystem. Whether it's the Little Miami, the Ohio, and all your waterways in your neck of the woods, we're really fortunate to have the rich biodiversity. And we're fortunate that you're here today. Thank you for celebrating World Water Day with us.
Thank you, Chris. So now I want to kick it over to one of my colleagues, Evan Banshoff from the Ohio River Foundation. She's here with us at the field station on the river. And I'm going to spotlight her so you can see what she is going to present to you all. So Evan has some mussels, and she's going to describe to you what those are and how amazing these critters are and where you can find them. Oh, Evan, hold on, sorry. We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Melinda. I'm very excited to share with you today a mysterious and fascinating creature living right here in our local waterways. It's called a freshwater mussel, and I have a live freshwater mussel right here to show you. This particular species is called a washboard. So many of them have very funny names. A freshwater mussel is an invertebrate animal. So looking at this, we see that rather than having an internal skeleton like we do as an invertebrate, it has a very soft body without any bones, protected by this outer hard shell. So when I pull them up out of the water, they close up tight to protect that inner soft body and organs. So it may not be much to look at right now, but when they are living under the water in our waterways, they are doing some really interesting things. First off, the way that this animal grows its babies and its life cycle is really incredible and interesting. So a mother mussel, when she has her eggs fertilized, she needs to find a safe place outside of her body where these baby mussels can grow bigger. So she would run out of room inside of her shell. So when it's time, she puts out a very special body part called a lure. And this lure does just what it sounds like. You may be familiar, if you're a fisherman yourself, you might use a lure at the end of your fishing line to lure a fish to come closer to you. A mother mussel uses a lure to attract a fish to come closer to her. And I have a picture of a lure right here. So the mother mussel puts out a lure that looks a lot like something that a fish would like to eat. So this particular example, it looks a lot like a smaller fish. It might look like a worm. It might look like some other small invertebrate. And she can even twitch and wiggle this lure around in the water to really entice and kind of encourage a fish to come closer and take a closer look. So if she is successful at getting a fish to come up close to her and maybe even try to take a bite, she squirts all of her Lochidia, these tiny baby mussel larvae, get squirted out into the water and they float into the fish's gills where they snap shut on the inside of the fish's gills. And they basically stay clamped on there and hitch a free ride as the fish is swimming around, living its life, eating, still receiving oxygen through its gills. So too are those baby mussels getting oxygen and nutrients that they need in a safe place as they grow bigger. Now, the fish is able to swim around and live its life. It may get pretty annoying as those baby mussels start to grow larger and larger. And at some point, they'll release and drop off onto the bottom of the riverbed to live the rest of their lives. So after this really interesting life cycle, why should we care about these creatures living in our waterways? Well, it all comes down to how they eat their food. So once a young mussel has landed on the bottom of a riverbed, now what? How are they going to get the food they need? Can a mussel swim? Can they move around at all? Well, the answer is no. They're pretty stationary. They can't move around a whole lot and they don't swim. They do have a special part of their body called a foot or a pseudopod, which can come out and help scoot them around just a little bit, but they mainly use that to bury or anchor themselves to the bottom of the river. And then they use two more body parts to get their food. We call these siphons. So the siphons help pull water into the mussel. So the mussel pulls water into their body through the intake siphon. They hold on to anything that's in the water. So algae, bacteria, smaller bits of other plants and animals, and even sediments and pollution. Anything that's in the water, comes into the mussel's body. They hold on to and digest the food that they need, and they meanwhile expel cleaner water out of the other segments. So they're like little natural pumps or filters living in our waterway. They're pulling water in, filtering out anything that's in it, and sending the water back out again cleaner than it was before. So that having a healthy mussel population in a waterway can really make a big difference in the quality of water. So I'd like to ask, do you think that these incredible creatures get the recognition and the credit they deserve for doing this really great service for us? You guessed it. The answer is no. They're one of the most endangered groups of animals in our area. But the irony is, historically, our region was once the most abundantly biodiverse area for freshwater mussels. So right here in the Midwestern region of the United States, here in the Ohio River Basin, we historically had the highest numbers and the highest biodiversity of species of mussels. And they're under a lot of threats, seeing as they pull in water, the pollution and the sediments can negatively affect them. And there's a lot of other things going on in the habitats where they live as well. So we want to spread awareness to you all about the fact that they're living here right under our feet. And I'd like to introduce you to Catherine, another ORF educator who's actually out in the field right now, ready to show us exactly where you can find freshwater mussels in your neighborhood.
Thanks, Evan. All right. Sorry, muted. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine. I am an Ohio River Foundation educator with the River Explorer program, the Mussels in the Classroom program, and a restoration program specialist. So I get to be outside most of the time, which is where I like to be. Right now, I am on the Little Miami River in downtown Loveland, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Little Miami River. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about where these mussels live and the ecosystem around it. So if you can see behind me, there is the bank of the river, and just beyond it, outside of our riparian zone, a really critical habitat, just beyond it are some homes and backyards. And behind me is a bridge, and off to my right is the Nisbet Park and some roads that I took to get over here. So all of these areas really influence this ecosystem. What people do in their backyards, what people do on these roads, all of that comes into this, the Little Miami Creek River and into the Ohio River eventually, because this flows into the Ohio River. So these mussels, they're living under all the commotion on nicer, warmer days. There are lots of folks out here paddling, splashing around and looking for living creatures in this waterway, including these freshwater mussels. So these freshwater mussels, as Evan said, they bury themselves deep into the sediment of the riverbank, or the riverbed, sorry. They live in the riverbed because it's a nice safe spot and it's warm and it's got all the nutrients they need. It's a good spot to pick up algae and whatever else is in our waterways, right? So they live under all the commotion of what we're doing up here. And they are impacted by our actions, positive and negative. So some positive actions might be things like planting native trees in that riparian zone along the banks of the creeks and rivers near us and along this area. But they also include negative actions like pollution and erosion that happen in the watershed more broadly. So anything we do in this watershed has an impact on this creek, Obannon Creek, the Little Miami, and eventually Ohio. And so they definitely impact the freshwater mussels in this waterway. So we want to make sure that we're really thoughtful about how we interact with our environment and what we do, because it impacts these mussels. So things like dams, in addition, can have a harmful effect on this waterway because they can block up the water, prevent the fish from getting through, and also we want to make sure that we're thinking about how that water can flow smoothly so that those mussels can get all the nutrients that they need. So there are lots of organizations, including the Ohio River Foundation and the Thomas More Field Station, that are working to protect these critical species and the habitat that we live in and they live in. And one thing that you can do as just a little scavenger hunt is look for signs of freshwater mussels in creeks or streams near you or at the parks you like to visit with waterways. One pretty good sign that there are mussels in your waterway is if you look and find old freshwater mussel shells. These shells are from mussels come and gone. They're no longer living, but they're a good sign that there are living mussels in the water. So you can dig your hands in that riverbed and look for freshwater mussels or other macroinvertebrates that might be living there, but make sure you're really thoughtful and conscientious about how you're handling them and treating them, because they are living and they need you to be as kind and thoughtful as you can be so that they can keep living and keep doing all those ecosystem services that Evan mentioned that are so important for our waterways. So be kind to the water and be thoughtful about how you're interacting with the environment, because we want them to keep living out here, right? So thanks for tuning in, and I'll send it back to Melinda.
Thank you, Catherine. That is such a great view. If it were a sunny day, I'm sure we'd all be jealous and want to be out there on the Little Miami with you. So yes, we got a good insight into what a mussel looks like up close and what kind of habitat you might find them in. And I love Catherine's challenge to get out there and take a look in your neighborhood, rivers, streams, creeks, all of those places, and see what you can find, because what you may have confused for a mossy rock could be a living organism, a mussel. All kinds of neat critters and amazing communities interacting with each other, as we heard mussels interacting so closely with fish, and that relationship they have. There's a lot going on under the surface of the water. And I want to introduce to you our next organism guest. And Chris, I'll kick it back over to you. He will be introducing you to quite an amazing salamander. And we'll pull up that video for them so you can get a close-up look of some other amazing organisms we can find in our aquatic ecosystem.
Can you start my video, Melinda?
Yes. Hold on just a second.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. We wish we were out there in the field with you. Excellent job, and thank you, Evan. We are back
Hold
at the
on
field
just a
station.
second,
and this is-
Chris. Oh, there we go. Okay, we got you. You go ahead.
Yeah, we're back at the field station. This is Professor Lorenz, and students, are you ready for your quiz now? Just teasing, no quiz today, but we're going to show you more mussels because we love mussels, as probably you do as well. So this is our mussel propagation tank. And our mussel propagation tank is a fancy term for a place where we keep the mussels from the river inside our lab so that we can study them up close and personal. You probably guessed why we might want to study them. We think they're really cool animals, plus they need a little bit of help. As Evan mentioned, many of these species are endangered or threatened. And we're going to ask Greg, our senior volunteer, to pick up one of our mussels for us. Excellent. And so this is one of the mussels that we study here at the river. And what we do with the mussels, we put the males and females together so that they grow together and they also breed together. And this allows us to make those Glaucidia that Evan mentioned, those larvae that will latch onto the fish. So right now, some of our students have attached the larvae onto fish and we're growing baby mussels. And then we can work with the Ohio River Foundation. We can work with our other partners to restore their populations back into the wild, because they're cool in their own right. Plus, they help us keep the water clean, as Evan mentioned. So thank you, Greg. Now we're going to leave the mussel lab and we're going to go over to our next lab where we have another pretty cool group of animals. So we're walking from the mussel lab, and this is our second lab where you're going to meet Spencer. Spencer is a senior biology major and also an aquatic ecologist. So Spencer's worked out here as a student for the past 4 years. And so when you students get to college, make sure you do an internship or something that you really like to do to get practical hands-on experience. So Spencer is at our Hellbender lab. How many people know what a Hellbender lab or a Hellbender is? Hellbenders are North America's largest salamander.
So here's one of our eastern hellbenders.
So as he said, this is our eastern hellbender. They're North America's largest salamander. They can get 2, 3, 3.5 feet long, giant salamanders. And salamanders, as you may know, are amphibians. So unlike reptiles, they don't have scales. They have very thin skin through which they breathe. And unlike most salamanders, they live in the water the whole time. So they are aquatic and breathe through the water. And so, Spencer, can you tell us why they're colored the way they are?
They're colored in this really brown coloration. As you can see, as they're going into this, as he's going into this region here with all these dark rocks, he blends in really well with the rocks in the bottom of the stream. So that helps him hide from his prey and predators that may come try to get him. As you can see, it's really, really hard to tell him apart from these dark rocks here. And he's got this mottled pattern to mix with the mottled coloration of the rocks.
Yeah, so as Spencer said, they're really well camouflaged. They're camouflaged to escape predation and also to sneak up on their prey. So they're predators of streams. And guess where they live? They live in the same areas our mussels live in. So just like mussels, hellbenders need clean, gravelly substrate. That's the material on the bottom of the stream. Fast-flowing streams to give them a lot of oxygen in which they can live. But unlike our mussels, hellbenders are nocturnal. You guys know what nocturnal means? You're right, that means they're active at night. So during the day, we keep the lights off, we keep lids on their tanks so they think it's at night and they feel a little bit more comfortable. But then they come out, particularly when they're hungry. It's about lunchtime, we're all probably getting hungry. And so let's try to feed one of our hellbenders. And sometimes they're a little shy. So we'll have to see if they're willing to eat for us today. So Spencer has their favorite meal. Minnows from the stream from which they eat. And here's a second minnow. You guys saw Bird Boys, what the students named it. Here's our second minnow here. Oh, did you guys see it eat it? They're really quick and they have powerful jaws. And we're going to try to see if it'll eat another one for us. Hold on, Spencer, and I'll try to get a little closer. So this is a special treat for us today, too, that we get to see the hellbenders feeding today. Thank you. So like we said, hellbenders are just like our mussels in that they need clean, gravelly substrate, and they need our help. Mussels need our help, and hellbenders need our help because some of their streams have been degraded. And Spencer, let's give them another treat. Show them one more animal that we like to study here. So in this tank, we have a different animal and it's hiding from us. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, there it is. And it blends in well too, so it's also camouflaged. And go ahead and lift up that rock. A little bit, maybe. Oh, I don't know if they can see it, but go ahead and try. Oh, you can see him there. Perfect. Go ahead and let him eat. Awesome. And that's Snappy, our snapping turtle. Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you.
All right, Melinda, we're going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chris. That was awesome. It is incredible to see these amazing creatures up close. They do camouflage so well. So as we're passing these creeks and rivers and streams or wading through them, you might not know what's under there. But mussels, salamanders like the hellbenders, perhaps a snapping turtle here or there, all kinds of examples of organisms we can find in the amazing watershed that surrounds us in our community. And how lucky are we that we have such amazing aquatic life here in the Ohio River? How lucky are we that we have access to so much accessible, clean water? Today is the day to celebrate that. So hopefully today you take a moment, maybe you can cheers your family at dinner with a big glass of water and say happy World Water Day. Maybe as you're getting ready for bed, as you're taking a big gulp of water after you've brushed your teeth, you can be reminded of just how easy it is to take for granted clean water and how lucky we are to have it. And all of the work that goes into ensuring that the organisms we share this habitat with, this watershed with, also have access to clean, clear flowing water. You can see the work that Ohio River Foundation does on a daily basis and Thomas More does on a daily basis to help ensure that these organisms have what they need. But we also want to challenge you and give you a bit of homework. Please have a moment in your classrooms or with your family and talk about ways in which we can all do things to ensure that our water stays clean. Because what we do, as Catherine said, and as Chris said, and Evan said, on a daily basis does impact our water. So think about a challenge or something that you may be able to do. It could be the type of food you choose to eat. Organic often means less impact when it comes to chemicals or use of water when we're producing food. Maybe it means you want to look at your yard differently if you happen to live in a home that has a yard, and challenge your parents to consider, is it worth adding extra fertilizer or herbicides? Maybe we are okay with having clover, a nitrogen fixing plant in our yard, instead of adding fertilizer that inevitably will run into our watershed and impact these creatures you've seen and ourselves as well. So take a minute, brainstorm some ways that you could take action, because it matters. What we all do matters and can have a big impact, and we can make a difference in our watershed, and we can make a difference when it comes to ensuring we always have access to clean water for ourselves and these amazing organisms. So now we'll open it up to questions. If anyone in the group happens to have any questions, I'll pull up a slide here with our contact information so that you can reach out to us if you're interested in learning more about programs that our organizations, the Ohio River Foundation and Thomas More, have to offer. Please let us know if you have any questions. We're here to answer them. And I'll pull up our contact information. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thanks to Catherine, Evan, Chris, and the rest of the crew for helping us pull this off. This is the first time we've ever done anything like this. And if you all enjoy it, we will be happy to offer more things like this in the future.
Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, Ohio River Foundation.
All right. Well, there's a view on the slide there, which I'll share again, just to make sure everyone who's joined us understands where we are, as we skipped over that a little quickly. Here is where we are all located right now in the Thomas More Biology Field Station, except for Catherine, who is still streamside on the Little Miami River. It looks like she's not getting rained on. Well, we'll close it out. I don't think we have any questions. I don't see anything in the chat. Thank you all so much. Happy World Water Day. Let's toast and cheers to clean water for all. And hopefully we'll connect with you all in some way, maybe in a river or stream sometime in the future. Thank you and goodbye.